At 72 years old, I watched my own granddaughter slide a stack of legal papers across the table, hiding them beneath a birthday card. The card had balloons on the front, a picture-perfect smile on the outside. But tucked inside was something darker, a forged deed that would have stripped me of the ranch I'd built with my bare hands. A ranch in Santa Fe worth $3.4 million. She thought my eyesight was too weak, my hands too shaky, my mind too slow. She thought I'd just signed confused and tired. But I saw everything. My name is Edward Callahan, 72 years old, retired petroleum engineer. For decades, I worked rigs in Texas heat and Alaskan winters, chasing oil in places most people wouldn't survive a week. Every dollar I earned, I saved. Every risk I took for my family. When I finally retired, I didn't buy yachts or penthouses. I bought something that mattered, an 80-acre ranch outside Santa Fe with red earth that glowed at sunrise, and a house my late wife and I dreamed about for years. She's been gone 5 years now. Cancer. Sometimes I still hear her voice in the kitchen humming while she made biscuits. She wanted the ranch to be a place where our children and grandchildren could gather, a sanctuary. And I thought it was. Until I realized that to my daughter Linda and my granddaughter Monica, it wasn't a sanctuary at all. To them, it was a jackpot. You see, when you reach my age, people start treating you like a shadow. They smile politely, they nod when you talk, but behind your back they plan, they whisper, they count your money, as if you're already gone. I thought my family was different. But that night at the kitchen table, when Monica slipped me that forged deed and flashed her influencer smile, the same one she uses for her 200,000 Instagram followers, I knew I wasn't a grandfather in her eyes anymore. I was a wallet with gray hair. Monica had been flaunting her wealth online for years. Hermes handbags that cost more than my first truck, red-bottom Louboutins champagne brunches in Scottsdale. Her bio read, self-made, independent, living my dream life. Self-made, that was rich. Every so-called independent purchase traced back to me the man who paid off her tuition, covered Linda's credit card debt, and let them both live rent-free on land that I paid for with 4 decades of grit and sacrifice. I remember sitting there in my plaid shirt, calloused hands resting on the table, looking at that birthday card, and realizing it was never about family. It was about possession. They wanted the ranch. They wanted the money. They wanted me out of the way, and maybe they thought I'd just roll over. After all, I'm 72, widowed. No longer the man who could lift steel pipes in the oil fields or negotiate million-dollar contracts. But what Linda and Monica forgot is that age doesn't make you blind. Age makes you patient. And patience sees everything. Let me ask you something. Have you ever sat across from someone you love, smiled at them, nodded along, while inside you knew they were plotting to cut you out of your own life? That's what betrayal at 72 feels like. It's not loud. It's not fast. It's a quiet, steady knife that twists slowly because it's coming from the very blood you raised. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted most, stay with me. This story might feel uncomfortably close to home. Every morning before the sun reached over the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, I sat by the wide ranch window with my coffee in one hand and my Bible in the other. Old habits die hard. My wife and I used to start the day that way. She'd hum while she buttered toast, and I'd read aloud a psalm or two. These days I read alone, but the ritual keeps me steady. I always believed that faith was the glue that held families together. That if you lived right, prayed often, and loved deeply, your children would honor you. That's what Scripture teaches: honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land. I thought I'd done my part. I worked the long shifts in the fields, saved every dollar I could, paid for braces, tuition, first cars, even bailed Linda out of debt when her bad investments collapsed. I thought sacrifice would buy loyalty. But sitting in that kitchen, watching Linda and Monica exchange a sly smile while they thought I wasn't looking, I felt the weight of a different truth. Sometimes even your own flesh and blood will sell you out if there's enough money on the table. I'd overheard bits and pieces in the weeks before. Linda whispering on the phone words like transfer tax shelter, Dad won't notice. Monica laughing about how Grandpa can't live forever, her diamond bracelets clinking against a champagne flute. It stung, not because of the words, but because of how casual they sounded. Like my life, my home, my legacy were just numbers in a ledger they were planning to split. I'll admit something to you, I'm not a perfect man. I've got a temper, I can be stubborn, and I don't always say the right words. But I was never the kind of father who abandoned his post. I showed up, I worked, I kept food on the table when oil prices crashed and friends of mine lost everything. That ranch, that $3.4 million piece of earth, wasn't just property. It was 40 years of sweat poured into soil my wife's dream brought to life. And yet in my own home, I'd become invisible. To them, I was the old man in the recliner, easy to manipulate, easy to dismiss. The kind of man you smile at while plotting to carve up his life behind his back. Faith tells me to forgive, and I do in my heart. But forgiveness doesn't mean blindness. Forgiveness doesn't mean allowing yourself to be stripped of dignity piece by piece under the excuse of family. My prayers at dawn became sharper, less about Lord protect us, and more about Lord open my eyes. And he did. Because the truth is, betrayal doesn't always come with shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes it comes with a daughter saying, "Sign here, Dad." It's just paperwork for the accountant, or a granddaughter posting a smiling selfie with the caption "Family First," while quietly drafting a plan to take everything you've worked for. If you've lived long enough, maybe you've seen it too, the moment you realize love has been replaced by calculation. That's when faith isn't just comfort. It's armor. I tell you this now as a warning. Never believe that age makes you powerless. They thought 72 meant weak. They forgot 72 also means seasoned. And seasoned eyes see through every mask, no matter how pretty the smile. It always begins small. That's how betrayal works. A missing checkbook, a credit card charge I didn't recognize, a little less money in the ranch account than I expected. At 72 years old, I tried to tell myself it was my memory. Maybe I misplaced something. Maybe I paid a bill and forgot. That's what they wanted me to think, that I was getting old, forgetful, easy to dismiss. But then I saw the pictures. My granddaughter Monica, 25 years old, standing on the balcony of a Scottsdale resort, posing with a Hermes Kelly bag slung across her arm. That bag cost more than my first truck. In another post, she was stepping out of a Porsche Cayenne red-bottom Louboutins, flashing under a designer dress. The caption read, "Independent, self-made, living the dream, self-made." That phrase cut deep, because I knew the truth. I was the one who paid off her tuition when she changed majors 3 times. I was the one who let her and Linda live rent-free on the ranch property. I was the one who covered the land taxes and utilities so they could keep their own paychecks for extras. And now those extras had turned into luxury handbags, spa weekends, and champagne brunches that cost more than most people's rent. Her followers ate it up. Teach us your secrets, Monica. Your goals. Your proof hard work pays off. I wanted to scream through the screen, her secret is me. Her secret is a 72-year-old man mopping up after them while they present my life's work as their stepping stone. But the most bitter knife came from the videos. Monica started filming me without my knowledge. A shaky video of me dozing in my recliner after a day of fixing fences. She captioned it, "Taking care of Grandpa has been tough, but love keeps me going. Please keep us in your prayers." That little clip hit nearly 200,000 views. The comments poured in, "You're an angel, Monica. He's so lucky to have you." This made me cry. Lucky. If only they knew that I was the one paying for the groceries in that very video. That I was the one buying the medicine she claimed her donations covered. That I was the one fixing the broken refrigerator she filmed as part of her struggling caregiver narrative. Because yes, donations started rolling in. Not giant checks, but steady streams. 20 here, 50 there, sometimes 100 from people who believed the story. I recognized the names when I later checked her Venmo account. A veteran on disability. A single mother who wrote in the note, "For your grandpa's medicines." I know what it's like to struggle. Over $12,000 in 6 months. And where did that money go? Not to my medicines. Not to the ranch. I found receipts in her closet when I went in to fix a broken drawer, a $3,200 Tiffany bracelet, a weekend spa retreat at Lake Tahoe, a $1,400 designer gown she wore once for an inspirational Instagram reel, all paid for by strangers' kindness. And then Linda, my daughter Monica's mother, showed her hand. She came to me one evening with a folder of documents. "Dad, you shouldn't be stressing about all this paperwork. Let me handle it for you. It's just a power of attorney standard stuff. Makes taxes and bills easier." She slid the papers across the table, smiling like it was nothing. But I've spent a lifetime reading contracts in the oil business. I may be old, but I still know how to spot a trick. Buried in the fine print was exactly what I feared: the deed, the ranch, my accounts, all funneled into Linda's control. She underestimated me. They both did. I smiled. I nodded. I said, "I'll look it over." But inside, something inside me hardened. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a slip of judgment. This was a coordinated plan. A mother and daughter who saw a tired old man and thought they could erase him before he even left this earth. So I began to do the thing they never imagined. I documented everything. I took pictures of Monica's receipts, screenshots of her Venmo donations. I recorded Linda when she pressed me about signing papers. At night, when they thought I was asleep, I listened to their whispers through the thin ranch walls. Patience became my weapon. Silence became my ally. Because here's the truth about betrayal: once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you know your enemy, you can plan your defense. By the time spring rolled around, the mask had slipped completely. Monica wasn't even careful anymore. She was treating my home, my name, my very image as props for her online empire. One afternoon, I walked into the kitchen and found her setting up her ring light by the stove. She had her makeup caked on her hair, curled perfect, her nails painted a glossy red. In front of her, a pot of soup simmered. She waved her phone in the air like a magician about to pull a rabbit out of a hat. "Grandpa," she said, her voice sugary sweet, "just act tired when I bring this to you. Okay? It'll make the video more real." I didn't argue. I didn't tell her that I had already seen the notes on her laptop scripts she'd written about my supposed decline. One draft literally titled, "Living with an Abusive Grandfather." I didn't tell her I'd overheard her on the phone with a friend, talking about how she could spin my stubbornness into control and my silence into emotional abuse. Instead, I played along. I sat in my recliner, let her adjust the lighting, let her spoon soup into a bowl and film herself, placing it in my lap. "My poor grandpa," she said to the camera, her voice trembling with fake compassion. "It's been so hard taking care of him. Please keep us in your thoughts." The video went viral overnight. 200,000 views. Thousands of comments praising her bravery. And of course, more donations. But here's what she didn't know. While she was filming me, I was filming her. A little device I'd tucked into my shirt pocket, recording everything. Her staged lines, her rehearsed tone, even the moment she stopped recording, rolled her eyes and muttered, "That should get us at least 1,000. It was the final straw. I realized then that this wasn't just greed anymore. This was theft, fraud, and slander, all dressed up as inspirational content. If I didn't stop her, Linda and Monica would not only steal my ranch, but destroy my name in the process. That night, after they both left for a brand dinner at a resort hotel, I sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad in front of me. My hand shook, but not from age, from rage contained too long. I made a list: bank statements, donation screenshots, forged documents, recorded conversations, receipts from Tiffany's and Hermes, her staged caregiving clips, evidence. I prayed before I went to bed. "Lord, I know anger is dangerous. I know vengeance belongs to you. But give me wisdom to defend myself. Give me strength to protect what you blessed me with." When I woke the next morning, I felt clear, resolved. If they wanted to play this as a war of narratives, then I would bring the one weapon they never expected: the truth. Documented, recorded, undeniable. And I decided something else too. I wouldn't just defend myself quietly. I'd expose them. In front of family, friends, neighbors, and if it came to that, the entire online world they thought adored them. Because betrayal feeds on silence. And I had been silent long enough. Let me pause here and ask you if you've ever stayed quiet while someone used you. While someone twisted your story for their own gain. You'll know exactly how I felt that night. If you're still with me, type 1 in the comments. Because the deeper I dug, the clearer it became. My own blood was building their future by trying to erase me. So I began to prepare my counterattack. Quietly, patiently, legally. I stopped being the invisible old man they thought I was, and I started being something far more dangerous: a man with evidence, time, and faith on his side. The thing about people who plan a scam is they tell someone else. Pride makes them boast. Or carelessness, the constant stream of rehearsals and logistics, leaves a trail. I learned that the hard way. It was a Tuesday night late. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant cry of coyotes beyond the fence. I should have been in bed. I'm not one for late nights anymore. But something woke me, not noise exactly, but a quiet scratch of pens and the low murmur of two voices in the spare room where Linda kept her laptop. I moved closer like the old man I was, and I listened. They weren't whispering about bills or repairs. They were talking strategy. If we frame it as emotional abuse, Monica said people will rally. We can do a GoFundMe, maybe a Patreon for survivors. We'll get donations, then pitch a book deal, Surviving Family Control. Linda laughed, and the sound was like a knife. We'll need a medical angle, she said. Photos of bruises, some doctored texts, we can use those fake message generators. He's gone on nights. Perfect windows. We'll say he's isolating me, controlling my money, making me fear for my safety. My chest went cold. Not because I was afraid of physical harm, I could handle a shove or a shouted word, but because they planned with the same calm I had once used to plan pipeline routes, to take my name and turn it into an accusation for profit. In their notebooks, I watched words like evidence creation, optimal posting times, and donation projections. They'd even done the math conservative goal, $50,000, optimistic $150,000 if it went viral. I began to notice the details they'd left out in plain sight. A draft GoFundMe in Monica's cloud storage titled, "Help Me Escape Abusive Family Life, Need $100,000 loan." A folder on Linda's desktop labeled evidence that contained screenshots of text threads that didn't exist, and photos edited to suggest neglect. There were practice videos, Monica crying into a ring light, perfect tears falling on cue, and spreadsheets tracking engagement, which captions pulled heartstrings, which music notes made viewers send money. This wasn't desperation. This was a business model. The most unsettling thing was how methodical they were about manufacturing sympathy. Monica had bookmarked websites that let you create convincing fake texts. She'd printed templates of medical records she could adapt. Linda had been practicing the language of survivors, short sentences, pauses, eye contact, meant to look too shaken to look straight into the camera. They'd mapped it all across weeks and months, backdating posts to build a timeline of escalation. Every staged hug, every caption about worrying about Grandpa was a breadcrumb leading to the trap and the money. I looked at the Venmo donations and read notes typed by hands that trusted what they saw on a screen. For your grandpa's meds or sending $20 for groceries, honest intentions from strangers. Those people believed in a story that Linda and Monica were engineering to make them feel like heroes. The receipts I found told another tale, a 3,200 Tiffany, purchase a luxury weekend retreat that lined up with a surge in donations, a private styling session at a boutique that posted Monica's testimonial 2 days later. The ledger of generosity had been rerouted into jewelry boxes and spa invoices. I did something then that felt both petty and necessary. I cataloged everything. Not for revenge, but so the world's kindness would not be wasted on a lie. I printed screenshots, labeled them by date, and saved copies of rehearsal videos with timestamps. I made a list of people who had donated small sums, wrote down their usernames and notes, and thought about how to tell them the truth without humiliating them further. The culmination of their plan. The thing that set my bones on edge was the scheduled reveal they'd penciled for a Friday night live stream. They'd timed it for prime hour when the algorithms favored emotional testimonials. They'd prepared thumbnails that showed Monica looking pale and frightened with overlay text, "My grandfather did this to me." I could almost hear the wheels turning in their heads. Outrage, donations, sympathy, fame. For a moment I sat in the dark and felt the weight of what they meant to do to take my life's work, my reputation, my name, and make it the raw material of their ascent. But something else rose up at the same time, not anger that consumed, but a clear, cold resolve to make sure the truth had as many witnesses as their lies did. I closed the spare room door gently behind me, not to hide, but to begin planning. They had plotted the theft. I would plot the exposure. That night, after closing the door to the spare room, I went back to my kitchen table and sat under the same lamp I'd sat under for decades. The house was silent except for the ticking of the clock and the occasional coyote out past the fence line. In front of me lay a neat stack of printout screenshots of Monica's fake text messages, Linda's forged documents, Venmo donations from strangers, and their content calendar for the abuse story. I didn't slam the papers. I didn't curse. Instead, I reached for my Bible. The leather cover was worn soft from my wife's hands. She used to underline verses in pencil. I flipped it open at random, but my eyes landed on a passage I'd memorized long ago. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? I read it out loud, slow, the way she always did. The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? The words sank into me like water in dry soil. I'd been holding so much rage, so much disappointment, that it had started to feel like a weight pressing down on my chest. Reading that verse lifted it just enough to breathe. Faith for me isn't about sitting quietly and letting wrong happen. It's about clarity. About knowing when to speak, when to act, when to protect what God entrusted to you. My wife and I had built that ranch together, brick by brick, acre by acre, believing it would shelter our family long after we were gone. Now I realized it was sheltering a lie. I thought about all the faces behind those donations, a single mother named Rosa who sent $5 with the note for Grandpa's medicine. A veteran called Mike who gave $50 saying, "This reminds me of my father. Stay strong." People who didn't know me but trusted the image of a devoted granddaughter caring for a frail old man. They deserved better than to have their kindness twisted into a profit stream. I whispered a prayer right there at the table. Lord, I don't want vengeance. I want truth. Show me how to bring it into the light without losing my soul in the process. And in that quiet kitchen with the desert wind rattling the window, an answer took shape. Expose them, but do it cleanly. No lies. No manipulation. Let their own actions be their undoing. It wasn't an epiphany like in the movies. No thunder, no voice from heaven. Just a slow, steady clarity. I didn't have to outsmart them with tricks. I just had to be patient and thorough. They had built their plan on deception. I would build mine on evidence. So I set up my own calendar, not for content, but for truth. Dates, times, screenshots, recordings. I saved copies in multiple places. I wrote down everything I'd overheard. I organized it in binders the way I used to organize safety reports on the oil fields. Each tab a different category: donations, forged texts, staged videos, fraudulent contracts. And I made a promise to myself I would not confront them in private. That would only give them time to spin a new story. No, I would wait until the moment they believed they were untouchable, the Friday night live stream, and then I would pull the curtain back for everyone at once. Faith gave me patience. Faith gave me courage. Faith reminded me that dignity at 72 isn't about looking strong. It's about standing for the truth when everyone expects you to go quietly. By the time dawn broke over the Sangre de Cristo mountains, I'd stopped trembling. I'd finished labeling my folders, and a strange calm had settled in. I felt like the man I used to be on the rigs, steady hands, clear head, focused on the job. Only this time the job wasn't building pipelines. It was protecting my name, my land, and the strangers who had been duped into funding a lie. I stood up, poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, and looked out over the red earth of my ranch. "All right," I said out loud to no one in particular. "Let's do this right. Because forgiveness may come later. But first comes the truth." Friday came quicker than I expected. The desert sun burned hot over the ranch, and by late afternoon, the sky was painted in copper and gold. To Linda and Monica, it was the day they would launch their big show, the night their truth would go viral. To me, it was Judgment Day. I'd spent the week preparing quietly and methodically. 3 binders sat on my kitchen table, one labeled donations, another fabricated evidence, and the last luxury purchases. Each was filled with screenshots, receipts, and recordings. I'd even made copies and given them to my attorney in town, just in case anything happened to me. Old habit from years in oil fields, you always keep a backup when lives or legacies are on the line. Around 5:00 p.m., Linda came into the kitchen wearing a silk blouse and diamonds that sparkled under the light. She had a glass of Chardonnay in her hand and that condescending smile on her face. "Dad remembered, don't disturb us tonight. Monica's got a very important live stream. We don't need distractions." I nodded, my voice calm. Of course. Wouldn't want to ruin the show. Upstairs, I heard Monica's laughter as she fussed with her ring light. She was dressed deliberately plain this time, no designer bags, no champagne glass. Instead, she wore a faded hoodie with a tear at the sleeve, her hair pulled into a messy bun. She was practicing her victim look in the mirror, tilting her head down just enough to look fragile, rehearsing tears that would tug at strangers' wallets. What they didn't know was that I had already set my own trap. Earlier that day, I called a local journalist. I trusted a young man named Aaron who had covered land disputes in Santa Fe. I invited him to the ranch under the pretense of wanting to talk about elder financial abuse. He showed up with a camera crew just before 7:00 p.m., slipping quietly into the den while Linda and Monica prepped upstairs. His eyes widened when I handed him the binders. "Mr. Callahan, this is solid evidence. Do you realize how big this could be?" I smiled. "It's not about big. It's about true. And tonight, the truth will walk itself into the light." By 7:30, cars began pulling into the driveway. Family, neighbors, even a couple of old church friends Linda had invited for support. She wanted witnesses, people who would nod along when Monica cried about her abusive grandfather. I welcomed them all with coffee and a steady handshake. If anyone noticed my calm, they didn't comment. At 7:55, Monica came downstairs. Her mascara was smudged, just so her hoodie sleeve tugged at to show that fake tear. Linda hovered at her side, all maternal concern. They had no idea the news crew was quietly setting up in the den out of their line of sight, ready to record everything. "Dad," Linda said sweetly, "why don't you sit in the other room? This will be emotional for Monica." I leaned back in my chair and tapped the binder in front of me. "No, Linda. I think I'll stay right here. You'll want me in the frame, won't you?" Confusion flickered in her eyes, but Monica was already focused on the camera. She hit go live. The ring light glowed, the little red dot blinked, and in seconds, hundreds, then thousands of viewers filled the stream. The chat scrolled with supportive comments. "We believe you, Monica. Stay strong, sweet girl." She opened her mouth, voice trembling on cue. I never thought I'd have the courage to say this, but my grandfather, that's when I stood, calmly, slowly, and I placed the first binder on the table right where the camera could see. "Before you tell your story, Monica, let's show them mine. Her eyes went wide. Linda stammered, "Dad, what are you doing?" But it was too late. Aaron and his crew stepped forward, lenses trained on the scene. Gasps rippled through the guests. And in that moment, the performance they had rehearsed for months began to collapse. Because this time I wasn't the silent old man in the corner. This time I was the one holding the script. The room froze. For a split second, all you could hear was the faint hum of the ring light and the murmurs of the live chat scrolling across Monica's phone screen. Monica blinked, her carefully rehearsed tears drying on her cheeks as she stared at the binder I'd set on the table. "Grandpa, please not now," she hissed, her eyes darting nervously toward the camera. Linda stepped forward, trying to block the view, her wine glass trembling in her hand. But I didn't raise my voice. I didn't wave my arms. I just opened the first page. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, looking straight into the lens of Monica's phone, "before you believe the story you're about to hear, you deserve the truth." The live chat exploded instantly. "Who is that? Is that her grandfather? What's going on?" I flipped the page to a Venmo transaction screenshot. "This is March 3rd. A single mother named Rosa sent $20 writing for Grandpa's medicine. On the same day, Monica spent $340 at Tiffany's." Gasps rippled through the guests in the living room. I turned another page. "March 18th. A veteran named Mike sent $50 saying, 'Reminds me of my father. Stay strong.'" That same night, Monica posted a photo of her new Louboutin shoes purchased with his donation. The camera crew caught every angle. Viewers at home began typing furiously, "Wait, is this real? Show more receipts." "Oh my God, I donated last month." Linda slammed her glass down. "Stop this, Dad. You're confused. You don't know what you're saying." I met her eyes, calm as stone. "I know exactly what I'm saying. And so will every one of Monica's 200,000 followers by the end of this live stream." Then I opened the second binder, Fabricated Evidence. Pages of fake text messages Monica had created with online generators. Here I said, holding one up to the camera, she made it look like I sent her threatening messages at 11:47 p.m. on March 15th. But my hospital badge log shows I was on duty that entire night mopping floors in the cardiac wing. I couldn't have sent a single one. The comments turned. "Wait, these texts are fake, he's showing proof." "Monica, explain this." Monica reached out with trembling hands, trying to close the binder. "Please stop." But I slid the third binder forward. Luxury purchases, receipts, bank statements, photos of shopping bags still tucked in her closet. "Every dollar you donated for my medical care," I said to the camera, paid for her designer handbags, her spa weekends, her luxury brunches. Not a cent went to me. By now, the guests in my living room were whispering, shaking their heads. One of my old church friends muttered, "Lord have mercy." Aaron, the journalist, caught Linda on camera as her mask slipped. She lunged toward the phone, trying to cut the stream. "This isn't your platform, Dad. You're ruining her career." "Her career," I said, my voice still steady. "Her career is fraud, and it ends tonight." And then came the knockout blow. I played the recording from Tuesday night, my phone speaker clear for both the live stream and the guests to hear. Monica's own voice filled the room. "If we frame it as emotional abuse, people will rally. We can do a GoFundMe, conservative goal, 50,000, optimistic, 150 if it goes viral." The room went silent. Monica's face went white. Linda's jaw dropped. The live chat turned savage. "She planned this. This is fraud. I donated to this scam. Monica staggered backward, mascara running no longer staged, but real panic. Grandpa, please, she whispered, her voice breaking. Don't do this. You'll destroy me. I leaned closer to the camera, my voice low but clear. You destroyed yourself, Monica. I'm just showing the truth. At that moment, a pounding came at the front door. Santa Fe Police Department, open up. The timing was poetic. Several viewers must have called in after seeing the evidence live. Aaron motioned to his cameraman to keep rolling. Linda froze, her face pale. Monica collapsed into a chair, shaking her head. I stood tall, shoulders straight, and walked toward the door. Come in, officers, I said. You'll want to see this. Behind me, the binders lay open, the live stream still running, Monica's empire collapsing in real time before hundreds of thousands of witnesses. The knock at the door wasn't gentle. It rattled the frame of my old ranch house, echoing across the hardwood floors. Santa Fe Police Department. The voices barked again. For a brief second, I felt like I was back in the oil fields, when alarms went off, when something broke under pressure, and you knew life was about to change. I opened the door slowly. Two uniformed officers stood there, serious as stone. Behind them, a couple of neighbors craned their necks, drawn by the commotion. The younger officer spoke first. Mr. Callahan, we've had multiple calls tonight about a potential case of elder abuse, and now fraud. May we come in? I stepped aside and gestured to the living room. You're right on time, officers. The truth is already on record. They entered, scanning the room. Monica was slumped in her chair, mascara smeared, staring blankly at the floor. Linda stood rigid, clutching her wine glass like a lifeline, her diamonds catching the ring light. The binders lay wide open on the table, pages spilling with receipts, screenshots, and notes. The live stream was still rolling, the red dot glowing, comments flying faster than the eye could follow. Nearly 300,000 people were watching. Officers. I said, my voice steady, for months, my daughter and granddaughter have been stealing donations from strangers online by pretending I was sick and dependent. Tonight they plan to escalate it into an abuse narrative, to seize my property and destroy my reputation. Everything you need is here. I pointed to the binders. Receipts, audio recordings, forged documents. And as you can see, half the internet has been watching the evidence live. The older officer bent over the table, flipping through a binder. His brows knit together as he read. The younger one took Monica's phone, turned it toward himself, and grimaced at the flood of comments. He tapped the screen and said, "This has already been screen recorded and shared everywhere. You're not putting this genie back in the bottle." Linda finally snapped, her voice high and sharp. "This is a misunderstanding. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's old, confused." But her words were drowned out by Aaron, the journalist, who raised his camera. "I've been here for over an hour," he said. "I saw everything." Mr. Callahan presented evidence calmly. These women never once denied the charges until the police arrived. This isn't confusion. This is fraud. The room broke into whispers. My church friends shifted uncomfortably. Neighbors shook their heads. For the first time, Linda and Monica realized the walls had closed in. The officers asked Monica to stand. She swayed as they read her rights, her lip trembling. Linda began to protest, but the evidence was too overwhelming. By the time the officers led them out, the live stream still capturing every moment, I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. Tired but free. When the door closed behind them, I finally turned to the camera. I don't remember every word I said. It wasn't rehearsed like Monica's speeches, but I remember the weight of it. To those of you who donated your hard-earned money, I'm sorry. You were deceived, but not by me. Your kindness was twisted into greed. Tonight, you've seen the truth. And I promise you, it won't be hidden again. I ended the live stream with a single click. Just like that silence returned to my ranch. The days that followed were a blur. Police interviews, statements, reporters calling non-stop. The video of Monica's downfall spread like wildfire. Grandfather exposes influencer scam on livestream. Some called it poetic justice, others called it heartbreaking. For me, it was simply necessary. GoFundMe froze Monica's account and refunded the donations. Venmo flagged her transactions. Brands that had once courted her for partnerships vanished overnight. Linda faced legal scrutiny for attempted property fraud. Monica's online empire crumbled post by post, platform by platform. And me, I kept waking up at dawn, pouring my coffee, opening my Bible. Life at the ranch returned to its quiet rhythm. The land didn't care about drama. The soil still needed tending, the fences still needed mending. The sunrise over the Sangre de Cristo Mountains was as steady as it had ever been. But something inside me had shifted. For years, I thought of myself as invisible, an old man fading into the background while the world rushed past. My family treated me that way. But what they never understood is that invisibility is power. You see things. You hear things. You learn patience. And when the time comes, you act with precision. That night, when I laid out the binders in front of thousands of strangers, I realized something: dignity doesn't vanish with age. Respect doesn't have an expiration date. And truth, though it may be buried under lies, always rises. The ranch feels different now. Quieter, but lighter. The poison of deceit is gone. My neighbors stop by with casseroles and firm handshakes. One even joked, "You made the news, Ed. You're the most famous man in Santa Fe." I laughed, but fame was never the point. The point was clearing my name, protecting what my wife and I built, and showing that even at 72, I wouldn't let myself be erased. I sit on the porch some evenings, the desert wind cool on my face, and I think about all the people who watched that live stream. Strangers in cities I'll never visit, families I'll never meet. They saw an old man stand up, not with fists, not with fury, but with evidence and faith. And maybe it reminded them that age doesn't make you weak. It makes you seasoned. Because in the end, my story isn't just about betrayal. It's about survival, about choosing dignity over silence, about proving that the truth, when spoken calmly and shown clearly, is stronger than any performance of lies. And as the stars rise over the ranch, I whisper the same prayer I whispered that night. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? I have nothing left to fear. 3 weeks passed before the dust began to settle. The story of my daughter and granddaughter's betrayal had rippled far beyond Santa Fe. Local headlines turned into national ones. For a while, strangers stopped me in the grocery store or at church, shaking my hand and saying things like, "You gave us hope," or "My own family turned on me once I needed to see you fight back." But fame was never my goal. All I ever wanted was peace, dignity, and the truth out in the open. The ranch is quiet again. No cameras, no police radios, no guests whispering in my living room. Just the hum of cicadas at dusk and the slow stretch of desert wind across the fields. I still wake up early, still pour my coffee, still open my Bible to read the Psalms. Some mornings I reread Psalm 27. The verse that carried me through the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? That verse means something different to me now. I used to think of it as comfort, a way to soften the blows of life. But after all that's happened, I see it as armor. Faith didn't just give me comfort. Faith gave me courage. It gave me the patience to gather evidence, the clarity to wait for the right moment, and the strength to face my own blood with steady hands instead of trembling ones. Linda hasn't called since that night. Monica hasn't either. I don't expect them to. The law will take its course. Court's restitution, whatever justice decides, I've handed that part over. I prayed on it, and I chose not to carry the weight of bitterness any longer. Instead, I think about the people who were tricked. The single mothers who gave $10 hoping to help with my groceries. The veterans who sent $50 remembering their own fathers. The grandmothers who wrote praying for you and your family. Strangers who had nothing to gain except the feeling of doing good. They remind me that the world, for all its cruelty, still has good hearts beating in it. One woman named Rosa tracked down my address and sent a handwritten letter. She wrote, "I thought I was helping you, but it turns out you helped me. Seeing you stand up for yourself gave me the strength to leave my own toxic situation." I sat on the porch and read that letter 3 times, tears in my eyes. Sometimes the impact of truth goes far beyond what you expect. And that's the lesson I want to leave you with. Age does not mean weakness. 72 doesn't mean invisible. Your voice, your dignity, your faith, they matter more than lies, more than showmanship, more than any staged performance. My daughter and granddaughter thought they could erase me with a ring light and a script. Instead, their lies fell apart under the weight of truth. If you've made it with me to the end of this story, I want to ask you something. If you believe that truth and faith still matter in a world full of lies, follow this channel and share this story because someone out there needs to hear it today. Too many of us have sat silent while others twisted our lives for their gain. Silence only feeds betrayal. Speaking truth, even if your voice shakes, is what sets you free. The ranch looks the same, but I've changed. I'm not just a retired engineer anymore. I'm not just a widower sitting quietly with his Bible. I am a man who faced betrayal head-on, armed only with evidence and faith, and came out with dignity intact. My wife always told me, "Edward, when you stand for the truth, you're never standing alone." Now I know how right she was, because that night I wasn't standing alone. Hundreds of thousands of people witnessed it. The law stepped in. Neighbors came to my side. And above all, I felt the presence of the Lord steadying my heart, keeping me calm when my world was shaking. I may be 72, but I've never felt stronger than I do now. Stronger not because I fought with anger, but because I fought with truth. Stronger not because I sought revenge, but because I trusted in something greater than myself. So if you're sitting at home right now feeling invisible, feeling like nobody sees your worth, hear me clearly. You are not powerless. You are not forgotten. And if the day ever comes when lies rise up against you, remember this truth always has a way of finding the light. The sun is setting as I finish this story. The sky above Santa Fe burns orange and red, and the fields are quiet except for the wind through the grass. I take a deep breath, close my Bible, and whisper the same prayer I've whispered every day since the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear tonight? As always, the answer is no one.